AB 386.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. With the uncertainty in the financial markets, our pension systems are working to do their part to protect the pensions of all of our public servants. AB 386 is intended to give our public pensions the ability to access every tool possible to invest and manage Californians' pensions funds. This bill creates a public records disclosure structure that will allow public pension systems like CalPERS to aggressively pursue investments in the private loan market. In the same way your financial information is held confidential by your mortgage company, this bill sets up a structure to protect a borrower's information if a pension system lends capital through a private loan agreement. The bill strikes the right balance between the confidentiality necessary for borrowers and the transparency required of a public pension system. With me is Daniel Brown, CalPERS Legislative Affairs Division Chief, who is a sponsor of the bill.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper, there are amendments listed in the bill. Are you taking those as author's amendments?
Yes, sir.
Good. Thank you. All right. So Danny Brown from CalPERS is with us on the telephone. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Danny Brown on behalf of the CalPERS Board of Administration, the sponsors of the bill. Let me start by thanking the author for his continued leadership on this issue and the work by the committee and the Republican caucus staff. Private debt transactions are investments by the pension fund serving as a lender to a public or private company seeking capital for such things as operations or growth. Currently, the fund makes these investments by paying outside fund managers to manage the transactions. AB 386 creates a disclosure structure for bringing the management of private debt investments in-house, which would provide the CalPERS board and investment staff more direct control of the investments and avoids management fees paid to external investment managers. This disclosure structure is consistent with current law related to public records disclosure for externally managed private investments from the pension fund and recent disclosure rules the legislature established in 2019 for public banks that are created by local governments. Modeling AB 386 after current law is important to be consistent with borrowers and market expectations in order for CalPERS investment staff to competitively enter this market at a scale that makes sense for the pension fund. CalPERS acknowledges the legitimate interest of the public in knowing how public monies are invested, as well as the obligation to be responsive to information requests. We believe the proposed disclosure requirements balances existing market expectations with the need for transparency in CalPERS investment activities. I'd like to thank you for your time, and I respectfully ask for your support.
Thank you. So is there anyone here in the hearing room who would like to speak in support of AB 386? Seeing none, anyone at the remote testimony site? We will then move to opposition. I have two opposition witnesses listed, C.T. Weber of the Peace and Freedom Party of California and David Soares of the Retired Public Employees Association of California. All right, David Soares, are you with us?
I am, thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning. I'm David Soares. I've lived in Santa Cruz for 45 years, and I'm a CalPERS beneficiary, retired after serving 32 years as a prosecutor in Silicon Valley. I'm here representing the Retired Public Employees Association of California. Imagine if CalPERS were to loan trust assets to a company called PlumpJack, but could refuse to disclose under the California Public Records Act that PlumpJack was owned by Governor Newsom, as well as the terms and collateral for that loan. Well, I don't think for a minute that our governor would enter into such a transaction. This is exactly the sort of thing that AB 386 would allow. Unlike currently exempt alternative investments, which are regulated by the SEC, these loans would not be subject to federal oversight. The staff analysis prepared for today's hearing correctly states that this bill had to be withdrawn in the last session when CalPERS Chief Investment Officer Ben Meng suddenly resigned. I'd like to focus the committee's understanding on what a gross failure of governance and fiduciary duty lay behind Meng's resignation. Private equity as an asset class makes up a mere 6.7% of CalPERS holdings, has a declining return profile, and yet is projected to be paid nearly $1 billion in management and performance fees. Mr. Meng disclosed all of his conflicts of interest with private equity firms in his Form 700 when he was hired in 2019 and again in 2020. But Meng was allowed to direct billions in trust fund investments to funds which he continued to hold a significant personal financial interest. Rather than required divestment has been required by the FEPC rules for the past 40 years, CalPERS CEO Marcy Frost and Board President Henry Jones covered up his conflicts from the majority of the board, the FTPC, and the public. Frost and Jones both admitted to Bloomberg that they chose only to inform 2 board committee chairs. Frost and Jones then tried to make it sound as if divestment of conflicted investments was some crazy new concept that had just occurred to them and not the official policy under the Political Reform Act since its inception. State Controller Betty Yee demanded a full investigation, but Board President Henry Jones took the matter into closed session on August 17th and has never reported out. This should come as no surprise because in 2018, with then Treasurer John Chung called for an investigation of why CalPERS had publicly represented that CEO Marcy Frost was pursuing a master's degree when she is a high school educated former clerk typist who had never been formally admitted to college. Henry Jones simply ignored him. These serious governance and fiduciary failures are not past history. Just last Monday, CalPERS announced that an employee spent the last 4 years openly embezzling from beneficiary accounts, $685,000 in counting. Was this person arrested? No. Has she ever had to post a bond like any other common thief? No. CalPERS just sued her. Private debt investor reports that CalPERS is already the 16th largest institutional investor in private debt through their alternative investment partnership. CalPERS needs greater transparency, not less. I respectfully ask that the honorable members protect our pensions by declining to send this unnecessary and dangerous bill to the floor. Thank you.
Thank you.